Okay, so this is Woodlands County Council meeting Wednesday, October 26th for budget meeting. And we'll call the meeting to order at... We'll begin with adoption of the agenda. Anything additional or otherwise to add?
No, but your worship, depending on today's discussion, the October 22nd meeting, and also have your members at large that RFD is ready to go, and so you may want to extend that and add that tomorrow morning. Just, yeah, but right now, no.
Turn things over to you.
Yeah.
Mr. Frank.
Thank you, your worship. Members of council, Mr. Reeve, at the last council meeting, there was a notice of motion to provide council with a scenario, different scenarios on how to break down the reallocation from the from that can occur. I want to make it abundantly clear to council, we are sticking to the financial recovery plan and at $3 million. The purpose of the exercise today in the documents that you have in regards to where we're at in the financial recovery, and Mr. World will provide you with that 2 pages that are on within your document, and then we'll go into both the capital and explain that process. So we came up with these different scenarios. And I want to again reiterate to council that the scenarios that are presented are very fluid. You can $2,1.8 million operating or vice versa. So there is no and would still be any remaining funds would still remain in the uncollectible. Once council has kind of given us the direction, if any, in regards to have budget meetings based on each individual department and where and any changes within their existing budgets to realign, as Mr. World had indicated earlier in the regular council meeting about with that, over to Mr. World.
From council, I don't see anything.
Your worship, members of council, refer you to page 3, which is it's a format you've seen before, the recovery plan basis. You'll see we have our total cash of the sheet with our portion that's left over section where it's to read at October 15th. That's our bank balance. We have some funds that are going to go out, and we've accounted for the ICF costs. That I prefer is more in terms of working capital. So that's on page 4. And so we're still talking about the same amount. And look at working capital as kind of what do we have as an organization to kind of manage cash flow over a short period of time. I've included inventories, working capital balance. We crush our gravel. We don't keep it for a long period of time. We use it the next year. So even if you ignored inventories, it gives you still a good idea of where we when you start from a working capital perspective in 2019. Basically, we didn't have at the end of it, and this is all at the end of June, we actually used working capital. Which should be before that, be negative in some areas. So that's that point. We started in 14 at about 10.5, went all the way down to 1.1 at the end of 2009. And I'm for all accruals and remaining expenditures, we should have a working capital of closer to 17 million at the end of the year. Risk to that, the biggest risk you have is your accounts receivable. So the payables we're going to pay out, deferred revenue, we should get our money from the government for deferred. If you said we lost all of our accounts receivable, we'd still be in a pretty good working capital position. And I'm not suggesting for not accounts receivable. We have approximately 1.2 of that under agreement that will be reduced or will be written off once their agreement is finalized. That's already been agreed to, and it's already been set up as an allowance. So really, we're talking about in receivables, and I would expect probably about $1.5 million of that is at risk, but we've already set up another $800,000 in allowance. So we're talking about $700,000 that we think is going to be collectible, but that it's still outstanding. So I just wanted to give you the picture of kind of where we're at in terms of the recovery plan. It's on track, and it kind of leads you into the budget discussions around can you reallocate a portion of future years. I will point on page 3, you'll see our collection for the year.
Andrew?
Yes.
That's okay. Go ahead and finish, but I have a question related to this working capital fund to fund reserves after you're done.
Okay. I just had one other, Your Worship, one other thing to discuss was the collection rate. You'll see 95% if accounts are that are prepayment plan or the monthly payment plan. So a fairly strong collection rate. I think we'd like it to see it closer to 97, 98%, but certainly didn't get flagged by municipal affairs this year because we were well over their 90% threshold. And I would say collect 90%. So I think we've got a good chance to collect close to 97 to 98% of taxes this year. And that would lead me to the fact that I think when you're $3 million will probably not be used for taxes, so you have an opportunity to reallocate.
I'd ask a question now then. So this is not to the last statement you just made, but for my purposes, the portion of reserves funded by working capital assets, so that that last column there, starting in 2014, we saw a decline, but then it was, from 15 to 18, it was relatively the same, stable, if you will. But then there was a huge like a $7.7 million decline, 18 over 19. Can you give just Cole's notes of what accounted for that?
Your worship, through to Councillor Dean. So the majority of it was the tax write-offs that we had to do in 19 after the, so the allowance for doubtful accounts started getting set up during the 17, 18, 19 years for potential uncollectible taxes. And then basically the wall hit and we started writing off taxes. So you'll see a fairly significant drop just strictly because we basically had to forgive a whole lot of money to a number of ratepayers.
And then similarly, you know, marketing over 20 of roughly 7 million. Can you explain behind that? What are the numbers behind that?
Yes, so through your worship, through the worship to Councillor Dean. So essentially, it's a big part of it is just the plan. So we have 3% tax increase, and we have 1% expenditures. We've got in our budget a $3 million allowance, which last year was basically zero used. We've collected a bunch of a significant amount of taxes, and the ones that we wrote off are already in the allowance, so they didn't impact that. And we've basically seen from under expenditures overall, we've had surpluses. It's just the
So I'll ask a question, since we were on that topic. That 18 to 19 that you're talking about there, that's kind of when, so we were, this is just like a company that are to be paid for a bill or an invoice that they've got outstanding. And so on their books, they have it as income, which we would have, and then have to make the write it off, and a portion of the reason why we wanted to write that off is because roughly a third we would have had to pay again in school tax in cash to the province. So some of that perk money is kind of helping that dramatic line coming back up, is it not?
Yes, your worship. So I don't know the exact amount of perk that we received, but it was significant. So everything that we've written off in terms of taxes was, we applied for perk. And I'm not sure I would say it's 30%, but maybe 20% of the tax bill for linear was probably school taxes. So we do have one large ratepayer that when their agreement is done, we'll be applying for perk again. And that, so I consider that, I guess I don't want to call it gravy, I just consider that not in our budget plan to get these additional funds necessarily, or not in our forecast for the year. So we could see a little bit of gain on our recoveries through the PERC program prior to the end of the year.
And the only reason that I'm really pointing that out is because when you see that dramatic rise from 2020 to 2022, everybody needs to understand that that's not all revenue through taxation that you're seeing. Some of that's recovery through that PERC program as well. Correct?
Yes. Yes, you're correct. If you look in our financial reporting, if you look back, you'll see the 1 year was significant, and it's in one of our main budget codes, tax recovery. It was a significant number, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Dean and then Councillor Wilhelm.
What does the PERC acronym
Provincial education. Rebate. C, what's the C for? Provincial education rebate.
is then we collect, we give to the province, but we're able to get a credit back for uncollected taxes. So we're paying school
that was part of what really contributed to the cash, because under and I'm just using rough numbers, but roughly we're collecting 30 million. We're giving 10 to the province in education tax, provincial education tax. That's why I use that third number. So if we under collect by say $7 million a year, let's say six. You under collect $1 million in 1 year, you still have to pay $2 million. So now you're out $8 in actual cash. And then you go into the next year, you get off that amount, then you get the 2 back. So this is why some of these, you could smooth some of these lines out a little bit if you looked at it a little differently, but it's hard to wrap your head around it first.
Sure, and the reason that I wanted clarity on that is, I know I had residents ask me, what was the reason for the lack of cash, and I didn't have an answer for it, but this gives a really good idea.
Sorry, I forgot. Councillor Wilhelm.
Rob, so I'm no money expert, so I just want a little bit of understanding on some of the numbers here. And some of this is gonna be historical, so well before where you were, but I just, with regards to the investments column, that's, what is that referencing to? What is the investments column?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm. The investments were put into general set of funds, bonds, and higher interest rates, GICs, so we called them investments. At the point when as the cash started going down, the investments, of course, were slowly depleted and then turned into cash. We've remained in cash right now. As you see, the cash balance is very high. But as we've been growing, we actually get a fairly good rate of return on all of our cash investments in all of our accounts. And as rates have been going up, especially this year, we've determined we're better off not to invest until we wait for the next rate increase, and then wait for the next rate increase. So you'll see that cash, it's one reason why we're showing you a lot of cash and not calling it investments. Normally we would have some investments, but we've chosen on purpose not to put into investments at this point in time because we're doing better just leaving it in cash.
So that from 2014 to 2018, that's our investment value, right? Not the money that we were putting into investments, but the value of those investments?
The value of those investments at the end of the day, yes.
Okay, so it's good to know. And then secondly, the AR column, which is accounts receivable, is that the value in there, that's the unresolved accounts receivable at the end of each of those years. So each of those years from 2014 to 2021, we were seeing accounts that were not cleared at the end of the year of 5.1 million, 3.7, 2.1, and it was just written off or carried over type thing. Like, how does that work?
So through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm. So accounts receivable, the balances in these accounts are more than just taxes. They would be taxes, to funds that we haven't got yet. So not all of it's related to taxation. But what happens when you're looking at taxes every year, at year end, you go and you assess your outstanding taxes. And let's say you have $3 million in outstanding taxes, and you will look down your list and you will say, well, this $1 million is at risk. We might not be able to collect that. So what you do at the end of the year is you move those funds, not from accounts receivable, but you actually book an entry to write them off as bad debts, and you set them up as allowance. So you've actually set up an allowance for doubtful accounts. You think so you've already covered those taxes. Technically, even though you. So that's what happens at each year end is you could see liabilities, your allowance for doubtful accounts go up to offset some of the accounts receivable, but the balance are consistent. You don't remove it from there until actual permission.
So it's a floating value year over year. It's not written off and zeroed each year, and it's not a loss each year. Okay, it's just how I was trying to wrap my brain around that. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Dean?
And just want to come back to the investments. So for the last 4 years, there's been no money in that ledger account. Would it be correct to say that we have investments that are still currently cash right now? So that the cash value of what we normally would put in investment, but we're waiting for the next interest, is captured in that 16.7 million?
The chair to Councillor Dean, I'm not quite sure what you mean. by
Yeah,
that.
sorry. So that investment account is at zero from 2019 through to 2022. And what I heard you say is during that time, those investments were required for cash flow, so they were converted from investment to cash, they were used up. But we do right now have money that we would like to put into a GIC, but we're waiting for an interest rate.
Let's say we're in a flat interest rate environment, facing the increases every month. So we've done the analysis where if we would have put it into a GIC, then keeping it in cash. So under normal circumstances, if I showed you this report, we would probably have $10 million in cash, and now how much go long term? That would be as you're building up your cash, start to stretch out a little bit and be year, maybe not beyond that at the beginning, but at some point in time you want, as you build your cash, you want to take advantage of better returns.
Right.
So we haven't been able to do that yet, but that's a step as interest rates kind of stabilize. I think we would probably start with the shorter term investments, do a staggered portfolio before we were looking too far out. Because this $16 million it does go down from January to June as our working capital gets used up. So we gotta be careful and make sure you don't overinvest in longer term investments that you can't out.
So, but just to clarify 100%, if we're in a stable environment, it didn't look like there's gonna be interest rate change, there would be a portion of that 16.7 that would be an investment.
Yeah, probably the majority would be of the, well, probably more than
Around inflation. Part of the issue is that the stringent requirements that are on municipalities on conservative investments like GI type of things, the disparity between the rate of return versus the rate of inflation at the moment is taking us backwards, right?
Your worship, so you're partially correct, yes, it's taken us backwards, but it had, let's say we were in a more diversified portfolio of investments that allowed us to be in more market-based, we would have also seen a big reduction in municipalities have always, under the MGA, been required, at least in general, we can't invest in certain things. We have very restrictive policies. But part of it is because preservation of capital is our number one agenda. On our business in general, right? We get a 1% increase in
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was getting in my second part is this longer term approach that you're talking to. So if we have an operating portion of, let's say, 10 million that we're able to operate that 6 months without a paycheck, for lack of a better description, then we collect on June 30th, right, for taxes. So we're back in the black again. We never run on credit, and we run on that $10 million available cash that's basically anything that's beyond that we could invest in something that's a little more market friendly, like just can't do it right now under the MGA. So if municipality lobby ability under the MGA, do you think it would be recommended as a long-term strategy? And I'm not talking about all the funds going into that one thing. I'm talking about a more long-term strategy for a better rate of return. If you're putting money away for a project that's to run, as long as you have enough to run on cash rather than credit, so you're not incurring finance costs as well. Is that something we should look at?
Your worship, I guess, from the standpoint of, I believe if you look at any large municipality, if you looked at their financial statements, they would have investment. They would be broad investment. So it's not necessarily you're not allowed, but I think you have to basically be given permission to go beyond what the MGA says. Because if you looked at the City of Edmonton financial statements, they're not sitting in cash and they're not sitting in GICs only, right? So for smaller municipalities, it's a bigger challenge, though I looked at 2 municipalities that are neighboring Woodlands County and have significant dollars, and they're all sitting in big balances in cash. So it's just the pressure that's on those. So yes, there would be a good chance to lobby the government to allow some diversification of your portfolio, right? Diversification actually reduces risk. It doesn't add risk.
Right.
If you have a diversified portfolio. So having said that, I still think capital preservation for a municipality is number one. You don't want to have a negative year, I don't think, if you can avoid it. And the rates that our bank is offering us just for sitting in cash is significantly better than I've seen anybody else get out of a bank account. So we're doing, it's a fairly fair rate they have for municipalities. And so it's going to be over 4% now, just sitting in our bank in the next with this last increase. So yes, 4% is not going to keep up with inflation, but at least it is a reasonable return for being in cash.
Yep. Okay, and I'm sorry to get into the grandiose kind of longer term stuff, but I think it's incumbent upon the council to really look that far down the road. So that's why I'm asking these broader questions since we were on the topic. Councillor Wilhelm.
It'll be a quick question. It just, and it might have been before. And he said, what is the county's dollar value that we need to survive, say, from January 30th expenses? What is that? I understand that's why we're building this operating reserve. What is that dollar value, just so I can wrap my head around that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, I followed the bank the last 4 years just to see what the number goes down. And I believe the lowest we got, our bank account went down, was around 5 this year. 5 or 6 million before we build our taxes.
Okay.
So we're already there in terms of having sufficient funds to not go into overdraft, as you're aware. Fund our operations, but not enough yet to cover both reserves and operations.
Okay.
Is it fair to say roughly 10 million?
For that 5-month period?
Okay.
Probably less than that.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably closer to 6.
Councillor Coulton.
Yeah, through the chair to Andrew. What would be, knowing that you know what the operational requirement is, what would be a safe haven for a municipality to sit in, say they had one total year disaster, so that they could operate for that 1 year? What would that threshold be, in your opinion?
Through the chair to Councillor Culkin. So I think that basically the recovery plan is where we said we needed to be at the end of the 5 years to do that for this organization. So that was really the plan, was to and you had every first time of the year you're using funds, you are collecting some funds too. It's not all out. Grants come in. 10 million probably. So if we're sitting on, at the end of the year, if you were sitting on about $25 million, I think you'd probably be close to where you need to be.
Thank you.
Okay. I think you got a question? Okay. Keep going.
Your worship, members of council, and again, staff are here to answer any of the questions in regards to any part of the capital budget. However, I do want to draw it to your attention, first of all, the capital budget, and explain to you our thought process in regards to the reallocation of $2 million, right? So, right now, under the financial recovery, the priorities have been set for the $3 million, subject to council rearranging them and re-looking at them and making final decisions in regards to that. So that's the left side of the column. But I want to go and jump to the debenture portion, and you have to keep this in mind. If we do the Horse Creek Road or ANC Road in 2023, we're estimating that cost to be $600,000, which is not part of the capital. 6 million, sorry, thank you. That is not part of the, so you'd add another $6 million, which would total up to 9. You're debenturing that over a 20-year period, right? And so if you look on the very first of your operating budget for 2023, if council does not do any reallocation of funds, we have to come up with a net of $316,000 because we have some debentures falling off in 2022. But the net cost of that is approximately $441,000 in debenture costs. Sorry, did I?
That's a report. 190 in additional debenture costs.
316 total.
316 minus the 125 of the year.
I apologize. So it's a net of 190. So we have to come up with $190,000 in our operating budget to pay for that $6 million in capital work. Now I go back to the capital just to understand, so we took in $500,000 chunks in both from an operating and expenditure, operating and capital side. So adding $500,000 to your capital, those would be the 3 new projects that we would recommend based on the priority, and again, in any combination thereof. And then if you went to the mill, which is another 500,000, we would then look at those other projects in regards to that and go slightly over that. And again, take the operating side, and again, in any combination thereof, would have to be included in that. Those projects, $100,000 increments in prioritization. And again, if I look at the second 500,000, whether you lease greater or do the financial management position, they're not necessarily in that priority. They're just as part of the $500,000 of reallocation. And with that, we can go through each one of those descriptions, both on in operation to give you further explanation, or we can just open it up, a question for the floor for questions and then deal with the specific.
What does council want to do, go through department by department, or you want to just? Oh, sorry.
So your worship, if I could just add one other comment.
Yeah.
So if we did none of these things and we just lived with the 1% status quo, it's important to note that there's repercussions to doing that in terms of service level.
John,
Yes, go
just
ahead.
for clarity here, Council Prestich and Colquitt and I, at that ACTEV meeting, talked about bicentennial funding. And it's my understanding that that funding of $100,000 that's included on here is not, it'd be more in the form of a loan. It was to allow that, no?
No.
It was to allow that group to get going. They're planning on applying for funding, and it's just that they don't have funds right now, so that $100,000 would come back to the county. Is that what you remember, Bruce and Peter?
Councilor Cookman.
Yeah, I guess the ask is for $100,000, and basically what it is for is like Councillor Dean says, it's the backstop. Has been funding applications. I think there's grant applications that Mr. Roach has applied for. Plus, obviously, there's some corporate fundraising and stuff like that that's involved. So, yeah, that's the basic idea is to backstop it. I would go as far to say that given the celebration that they would put on, not the total amount that would be paid. And I don't even, at this point in time, we don't have the budget numbers incomplete yet, but we just ask that that be put in budget deliberations so that we can finalize that before we approve the budget.
Councilor Prestich.
Through the chair to report on the two leases, that's $150,000 per year.
That's correct. We got a quote from John Deere. The new grader is $660,000.
So we're paying 150.
600,000 in 4 years.
So in 5 years, you purchased a new grader, which is typical.
All right.
Yeah, but by the time you pay for the interest and stuff, right? So.
Question on that is that what is the normal depreciation on a grader like that and life cycle?
7?
I don't know for sure. I think Andre was saying 8 years, ours are 8 years old, so I'm not sure that's probably what, at the end of their life, probably around 7, 8 years. But I'm not sure.
What do you got?
Can't quote me.
As far as,
You lives, 10,000 hours.
well, we are currently putting a brand new motor in one, and it's at 9,000 hours.
Yeah.
And that's kind of run of the mill, so we could be looking at that on any of those other ones coming up. So I would say they've probably reached their life, being functional for us.
Councillor Wilhelm. So, I'm looking at the increases on the operating budget, capital budget increases you guys are potentially looking for if we shift some money over to those situations. And I'd just like to know how, I see a lot of wants in here and a few needs for sure. And I want to look at this wearing two hats, one as a councillor, but also as the residents in the region, understanding that there is, if we decide to go this route, the potentiality of having more funds to do more within the county. And I think a lot of that's going to fall around on a resident's viewpoint of it. They want to know They're gonna wanna know how we're helping service levels essentially. So is any of this money getting ground greater routes, like more time spent on servicing the roads? Because let's be honest, we've seen the service request reports, 90% of all complaints are about roads and the amount of maintenance done on the roads. And I understand some of that has to do with weather and conditions on the road, but I think something we do need to focus on is we've been dropping service levels for a couple of years in a row now while increasing our taxation rates to the residents. Part of shifting some of this money needs to go back to maybe increasing service levels slightly to the residents. The number one thing they care about is their roads. They don't particularly care about air photos being done to the municipality. They don't care about the SiteLink conference. Like, I mean, these are nice to haves, but I'd like to see some of that potential money that we could move over focus on increasing service levels for our residents.
Your worship, through to Councillor Wilhelm, and yes, your 50% of your operating budget is infrastructure costs related, right? And in general terms, it is roads, right? In 2019, the previous council made a decision to cut by 15%, and we've proposed. So, in essence, by the time you're done your financial recovery plan, you've decreased your level of service by 10%, which primary is 50%. 50% of road maintenance and all the association with infrastructure. Unfortunately, and again, wants and needs is defined by the individual departments, and these are all needs based on what delivery certain product you're delivering to the ratepayers. Because whether it's new boardroom cameras, those, when we get meetings and we have a hard time hearing and provide better efficiencies. And I know that's a small item in photo. A planning perspective, help us make planning decisions and historical data. So again, I'm not questioning that. So this is the balance that we as administration have to determine when we bring forth these needs. We identify them based on our needs, what we see level that we can start to put back into the organization that'll both help long term, right, and directly. And anything that's an increase in equipment repairs or regards to any of the continuation of the ditch program, we are bringing that service level back. However, and I truly believe that as we reduced our level of service by 15% 3 years ago, I have to commend the staff for continuing to deliver a service that is, for the most part, acceptable to the general ratepayer.
No, I'll just follow up my comment. I picked those two things because they were
Yeah.
the first thing that my eyeballs fell on when I looked down at the sheet. But I just, again, I'm just going to reiterate the same comment I made. I'm not saying necessarily any one of these is better than the others. I understand the departments have needs that they want. I just feel we need to make sure that if we're going to justify any of these costs for some of these additional fundings that we're going to put into some of these divisions, that we're going to have to explain that to our residents when certain residents in our county are having their roads removed from cold mix down to gravel, and there's an assumed value of what that costs, and they're going to look at us funding something for $100,000 in here and say, I get one thing from Woodlands County, my road and the maintenance on my road. I don't. What value does this $100,000 bring to this thing that you're doing within your administration? where $100,000 would take my road back to where it should be, right? So that's how, when I'm looking at the budget, I'm going to be evaluating this stuff.
Councillor Cook and then Councillor Dean.
Yeah, through the chair to administration, I guess my concern is that level of service is operational and how we spend our capital spending, and I think that we really have to have an understanding, for example, with the graders, is a full maintenance lease going to, in the long term, cost us less than ownership, given the repair costs of today? Because I think that one of the things that we have to start looking at, and this comes from my business experiences, is that sometimes ownership is more expensive. And not only that, but you have to put people in the seats of those equipment as well. Full maintenance lease is based on different conditions. So I think when I look at this, I look at the relationship between the capital expenditure and the operational, and we have to have a really good understanding that the operational is the one that delivers the service. And so we have to be careful how we do our capital. And so for me, I would really need that information. What is it that the cost of full maintenance lease is compared to the life cycle of ownership, and how that's attached to the mechanics we put on it, the people we put in the seats. And that's kind of some of the information that's going to be hard to get.
So your worship, through to Councillor Copeland, is as a corporation, Woodlands County has one disadvantage, is that we don't get any tax break. So a business that leases a piece of equipment can write it off and reduce their taxes in regards to that. So if you have the money, and it's been a general philosophy for most municipalities, and again, I can't speak for them all, but in my past practice, if you have the money that you can afford to purchase your capital equipment, you're far better, because you're paying interest costs on leasing that piece of equipment based on your borrowing their money. And it's typically higher than what a municipality can borrow themselves. Right? So that's why one of the things that we do have an equipment reserve of approximately 4 million. Yeah. That we stopped reinvesting in 3 years ago, that we would, by the end of next year, 2024, be able to start reinvesting into that equipment reserve. So where we're actually, if that piece of equipment gets used, we're actually charging ourselves for that, and it goes into that equipment reserve. So that's one of the things, and to answer your question, I'm sorry that we can give you guidelines to say this $300,000 is $150,000 at 5% or whatever the interest rate that they're going to charge us. We can show you that lease agreement versus here's the purchase of a capital equipment, $660,000 divided by a lifespan of 5 years to go, or 7 years. I think it's typically 7 years for a grader, right? And do that, but it'd be a very rudimentary calculation, not in detail. One of the things, and again, the asset management program is where we're getting to the point, and I want to always caution when I say that, because I always want things faster than they actually occur, only because that's my nature of personality, right, is that we have a roadmap being presented at the next GMP or council meeting to show where our asset management is going to be, where you can actually start using that data to make informed decisions, right? We're not there yet, unfortunately, and again, we're doing, we're getting there, and that's why we're at the next stage for that asset management coordinator position to say, we gotta move to the next stage. We've collected the data, we still need to collect more data, but now we gotta start to look at, analyzing that data and start to, put decisions in front of council. We're probably a year away, year and a half away before that occurs, though.
Year and a half.
Well, and again, I saw the roadmap that put us out to 2027, and I asked that it be relooked at.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Counselor Dean?
Thank you. I want to bring up one of those nuggets that I was able to retrieve from that open house. And it's pretty granular, I guess, like it's pretty specific when it comes to an overall operating budget, but I need council to hear what the nature of this conversation was. So, a couple residents, along with our CAO and our Director of Infrastructure, were talking about the cost associated with resurfacing a cold mix, a section of cold mix, and versus maintaining that surface when it was in gravel for a 10-year period. So 10 years was identified by Andre as kind of the benchmark for how long these cold mix surfaces last. So the question posed was, what does it cost to maintain that section if it's gravel on an annual basis? And, you know, he's trying to come up with an answer for somebody right in front of him who doesn't have access to everything. But what he said afterwards, and the CEO and I kind of validated it, was, in Andre's opinion, it was approximately $13,000 a year in annual maintenance if the surface was gravel. So, you know, you have $100,000 for a surface that's supposed to last for 10 years. Now, of course, there is maintenance, you know, there's pothole repair, etc., versus 10 times 13,000, which is 130,000 if it's gravel. So what that said to me was the number is probably a whole lot closer to zeroing out and balancing if we look at reintroducing that cold mix. So again, that's a very granular concept, but I want to put that out there for council to hear.
Counselor Crushing?
Just kind of a follow-up though, but if we got $100,000 on some of these roads we were resurfacing, it wasn't just pothole return or pothole repairs all the time, there were large sections that kept getting repaired. I mean, your $100,000 could be $100,000 initially, then 50, 50, 50, on, and that's kind of where we end up with works. It wasn't, some of those weren't just potholes, and some of them, it was just the base below that wasn't supporting the traffic on the road, unfortunately. I do agree, it would be nice to start putting some of those roads back and turning for the residents. You know, it's a life they've had, it's something they're used to. It's like, I mean, some of the people moved to the subdivisions and districts, you know, for that because that was available.
Yeah.
I just think financially we're not quite there. When we start doing that program again, I would like to see the numbers as to like what type of, some type of study as to the type of traffic that's down there, the type of base, if we can establish that we have on the road, and what would take to actually build something that would withstand what we're putting in it.
Counselor Williams?
I was just gonna add something to the oiled roads problem, I guess, that we've created now too. I don't know how many of you looked at the maps that were presented at those open houses, and we have little gaps of gravel spread through where there's oiled roads, so I don't think you can run a grader and grade the oiled road and the gravel road, so we're creating way higher maintenance costs by doing like little pieces of it too, so. I know that's really off topic of the budget in we're creating as well.
So
I'm gonna add one small part to this, just to, something to consider as well with regards to this, and then I'll move on from it, but one of the members that were at our open house was one of the members of the team that does property valuations in the county. And he had asked us if we understood the amount of property value changes that occurs when a road goes from cold mix to gravel, and the effect that that's going to have on our residential taxation that's going to happen. We might be saving $100,000 by not paving that road for 10 years, or resurfacing that road, but over the course of 10 years, the drop in valuation of those properties could equal that same amount anyways. He said it's a significant impact on people's property values when you change the road from a cold mix to gravel. He was, in his opinion, shocked that we did something like that.
Councillor Prestich.
Getting through the chair to administration, getting back to the equipment like the graders. So if we lease it, it comes out of our operating budget. If we buy it, it comes out of our capital. Am I right?
It can, either or, yes, but that's what, again, if you look at your capital time, we have no graders in there. However, we do need to look at replacing those. So nothing stops of taking that $660,000 worth of grader, right, and moving it to capital, right? But we don't believe we're there yet. That's when you're looking at an $8 million in capital asset replacement is, and part of that is equipment, right, over the length of their the entire lifespan of that is, you have to take that into consideration. And that's the next challenge that you'll have in 2025 is how do you get there?
Go ahead, Councillor Prestich.
I know we've gone over this before, of contracting our grader beats out. The last time I talked to some contractors, and they said the way we did the tender was not good. It could not afford. I think we have to look at this again, more fair way of doing it. Because I honestly think it was kind of on the side of making it hard enough that it was costing more to do the greater contractors. So I'd like to see it redone again, put out to tender with less stringent rules in it.
Your worship, through to Councillor Prestich, and that an interesting comment and respecting the comment, I think if that's the direction that council wants to do, we would rely on municipalities' contracts. For example, Yellowhead County does a vast majority of their by contract, and I know Greenview still does some of their grader beats by contract. So I'm sure you would mirror those contracts when they go out for bid. So and I know Greenview's been doing it since 1994, and I know Yellowhead has been doing it since 1994. So there are a number of municipalities that have contracts that we could mirror off of.
Okay, so let me take us maybe to the big picture here. And this is the hard part and the frustrating part of this whole process for us right now, because where we came from to where we're going to, we're in the middle of right now. And we've had to come through some austerity, we've had to come through some bad decisions in the past, we've had to come through COVID, we've had to come through the bankruptcy of a major taxpayer, we had to come through a financial crisis, the incredible inflation that we're seeing, all the pressures that have hit us. This is much, much more than the perfect storm. This is a force 5 hitting us. It's just ridiculous. So and I'll speak to the broad strokes here, and I think this is what council wants to see, but, when we initially were sitting around the table, we had conversation, I'm hearing a lot of the same kind of conversations. How much does it cost to maintain this piece of road? And the answer is still, I don't know. And the reason that the answer is still, I don't know, because that was one of the first thing that I think it was Range Road 120. I said, how much does this piece of road cost to maintain annually? And the answer was, I have no idea. I couldn't believe that we had no idea what we spent on a road monthly, annually, whatever. And then they were saying, well, I paid for something. Well, how do you haven't replaced it, you haven't done this, you haven't compared that? Well, we saved it in running graders on it because we didn't have to grade it anymore. Great. Where's the money? You know, where's the cash in the bank? Because if you're saving all that money that you're not running a grader for, then the cash would have spilled over into the account. So did they use it to pave something else, or did they increase the service level? And so part of this problem is when we talk about the oiled roads, we need to have a really good conversation with residents around the service level. And basic service level, gravel, then dust control, then oiled, then cold mixed, then paved. And have a conversation around that. Some of those service levels will be able to apply on the roads that are already there. Some of them won't be able to be applied. Like honestly, based on the amount of traffic complaints and the way they beat the tar out of that road annually, I think we'd be better off on a financial basis to just pave the first kilometer of Range Road 120. And we'll put rumble strips in it to make everybody feel at home. But,
Speed bumps.
well, because I mentioned that to a resident, I was like, well, you know, we could pave it, and they go, oh, for crying out loud, don't pave it, everybody speeds, you know, then everybody will speed so fast, so I made the joke about building rumble strips into it. Well, that'd work, right? So, so there's a large picture here, and I'm hoping that, and the reason I'm saying this with staff in the room, because is that the program that we're building? Is that gonna paint that picture for us? And then we talk about the asset management on the equipment side. And I'm a mechanic by trade. I would love to get my hands on something with 10,000 hours on it. 10,000 hours? Holy smackers, it's not even broke in yet. Like, that's brand new for us. We run this stuff until there's nothing left of it. Then we build it all over again. Like, so where are we on this program? And I know there's a sweet spot. I hope this is coming. So just please tell me. And when you say a year and a half away, I'm like, oh man. But what?
So your worship, members of council, and again, you have to go back to 2019. You lost a net of 11 employees, right, that were doing work based on a 15% reduction in operations, right? You've added asset management and you added a communication component to the organization, right? Those are the two fundamental basic services that were added to this organization that at a cost in that 15% reduction, right? So you had to make up for that as well, right? We have an individual that is the sole individual up until last year was the individual getting asset management ready. We're now in the process of collecting the data that, and Kara will correct me, we have the road data, we have the water and sewer data, we have the culvert data, but there are other components to the road data that we need to do before we start doing the analyzing. We're bringing the consultant that's working with Kara to show you the roadmap where we believe that we're going to get to. The initial roadmap that I saw the other day said 2027, and I said, that's unacceptable, right? Because I believe this council in 2 years wants to be out of this financial crisis and start to rebuild this organization and municipality, I should say, to where an acceptable level of service. We don't know what that acceptable level of service from council is, right? Because you all have ideas of what a road should be graded and how often and a whole bit. But it all goes sideways when the weather turns and certain ratepayers complain based on their impressions of that. So we're gonna show you the science behind that, right? Will it be perfect? No. But at least we'll have some data that supports that decision, so.
Okay, so.
So I guess what I'm asking for council is 2 years left in your financial recovery. We're still on track. We're still dealing with a 1% increase. We're not doing anything more. All we're asking is, this is where we believe we should reallocate the funds. That's nothing more, nothing less. Now, if council wants to reallocate it all towards infrastructure, we can do that.
So let me just make an analogy again, because I don't know how to live my life without doing that. As the asset management information becomes collected, we get stuff that becomes more and more clear. So I'm gonna liken this to a lousy snowy picture on a television set, where you can kind of make out that there's things happening and the picture's slowly coming into focus. But there are major components of that picture that are forming for us, or are there? And can we make some decisions based on those items and communicate that to residents that this is the direction we're going in? I think long-term, this is absolutely the right direction for the municipality. I'm just worried I won't stick around long enough to see it through. So that's the reality of the whole thing. And, you know, you can only tell people have patience, you know, through so many sets of shocks in their car. So that's really, and if we can communicate this to residents that this is where we're heading. We got handed a real mess here, and we're still in it. You know, as a council, as a municipality, as a province, we're still in a mess. But I think if we can show people the roadmap that we have in mind and really communicate that roadmap, maybe they'll have a little more patience with us and say, yeah, that's where we want to go. But we're gonna need to show them that roadmap.
And I think if, your worship, if I can allow Ms. Kennedy to explain to roughly where we're at in that roadmap, and that roadmap will need to be adjusted depending on, again, resources. And ultimately, it is the data that has to be collected to do the analysis, right? So.
And if that's not the direction that council sees, please tell me, but we want to hear from Kara, certainly.
Yeah, can I just make a quick
Go
comment
ahead,
before I
Councillor
start?
Wilhelm.
So, what you guys given here is good. Like, this is what we asked for. And it'll go back to the comments I made earlier. Like, you've got a line item in here, equipment operator position, X amount of dollars. Commentary on it. What does adding that greater operator do? Does that increase the amount of beats? Does that increase the service level that we're providing, right? Like, we have the potential of more funds to be moved in here. I don't know if this is the right wording, but if you're picking and choosing things to throw onto this budget where we're potentially increase it for you, you almost kind of have to sell it to us a little bit, right? Like, that's, you've asked to increase the operator position by adding one in and then putting a line item on there and then not telling us how that affects anything.
Yeah.
So there's one thing like that. That's what I'm saying is there's this potential ability to increase your guys' budget, and you've put a bunch of stuff in here. It's just not sold to us very well. Like, I don't understand why we'd want to spend $90,000 on an operator. What does that do for us, right? That's what I'm saying. So I mean, and then the flip side, just my second part of this, what I want to say. We're being asked to wait for the asset management to come down the pipeline so we can make better and more informed decisions in the future with regards to roads and service levels. I am 100% on board with that. I believe in this program. I believe it's going to do very well for the future of the county. We're also asking the residents to wait for that as well. And in the meantime, you guys are making decisions on our infrastructure while also asking us to wait to make decisions on infrastructure. You see the two sides of that? You've made a decision that a road is no longer worth it to maintain as cold mix based off of what? Your opinion? And then asking us not to make decisions based off of our opinion, but wait for hard data to come out of the asset management program. That's a hard pill for us to swallow. And that's the frustration that I think we feel. We get the brunt of those decisions being made that you're making on a thing that you're asking us to wait for. If that makes any sense for what I'm saying. So that's where the comments from myself are coming from, that frustration.
Get some of those comments as well. So, and the reason, and if we want further explanation, that's why the staff is here sitting in the background, ready to answer any of those questions, items in more detail. I can tell you the question is just simply we management information we infrastructure and we need to replace that. That's the reason why that position is there.
Okay.
My turn, your worship, members of council. The asset management plan coming to you guys along with the roadmap. And so the plan, currently it has all of our roads, our water sewer, our storm water in it as well. So we have replacement costs in there. They're probably not perfect, but they're somewhere to start from. And then as we do more paving projects, we can increase the reliability of the data. Right now it's based off of their model, for example. We have expected useful lives in there, how long we think it's gonna last. So we have an approximate value and we have a timeline. So you'll see it'll be like a 1 to 20 year timeline. So we've started to use some of that stuff where, for example, the stormwater system in Fort Assiniboine, it's saying that it should be replaced in 2027 because it's 50 years old and kind of the expected life of a culvert. So in the operating budget, you'll see, usually we do camera work on the sewer lines in Fort and Blue Ridge. And this year, instead of that, they want to try and do the stormwater system. So we can actually give an evaluation of the condition of that asset and then make a better determination of how long it's going to last. So it's little pieces, I guess, that are building on each other. So those are the main asset categories that we have in there. Have we fleshed out all the life cycle costing? No. Have we determined all of our life cycle strategies that we use? Like you're going to mill it twice and then you do a full repave. Those are things that we have to flesh out and then come up with the life cycle cost. So that is some of those bigger picture procedure ideas when you're also trying to get data in. So we don't have all of our building data in. We have the buildings in there. We have a replacement cost from a 2015 insurance appraisal. So it's pretty good. It probably needs to be updated. We don't have conditions on any of our buildings. So when you're giving a full 20-year picture on what you guys are going to have to spend to replace things, we don't 100% know that yet because we don't have all the base data in. We don't have any of the rec stuff in, and I don't have the equipment in there yet. But we do have the bigger, larger components. So I hope when we show it to you, you'll see that and be happy with it that you can start using it. But there's still more. So the would be and thinking through some of this demand then on our infrastructure staff also to be, every time there's a line break, to be recording it in the system, right? So that we're keeping track of all these things. part of the intermediate cohort that we've been accepted to is the level of service and a communications plan. So I think a big part of what I'm hearing too is you guys talking about level of service. We need to define what our level of service is, and we need to hear that from council and the ratepayers. So the idea of this process to have, and we're working with, I think there's 10 or 12 other municipalities to come together and define your level of service, to get that input from council and from ratepayers, so that we know what that is, and then we can do a baseline cost for that, and then we can be able to determine it's gonna cost this much more for this increased level of service. So it is coming, it just takes a long time, or not a long time, but you have to pick and choose. So, and I think it's fairly new for a lot of municipalities. So, yeah, so that's where I guess that's kind of where we're at. We also have some limitations with how we've collected data in the past to get some of these costs. So some of it is working with our finance system and getting the finance system and everything that we're doing in the field to talk to each other, which is some software stuff that we're gonna be looking at this year, I believe, because there's some changes with Bellamy happening and whatnot. So are we using the best software? We're not sure yet, but all those things take time to investigate.
So here's a question maybe. And the way that I think all the questions that council's asking right now is around the level of service, condition report, where do we go from here, how do we build the roadmap, that kind of thing, the asset management their decision on some, to be able to use that system to make really good decisions based on it. So when I think of a priority in something like this, and kind of wrapping up some of the ideas that I hear around the table, if that's the biggest stumbling block in this, and you said yourself 2027 is far too far away to complete this, is that a resource then, if we have help, or how do we after we implement this, the more intelligent decisions we're going to make, and the better that we can do this. So am I off base on this? But Councillor Wilhelm and then Councillor Colton.
I'm gonna go back with regard to 2019 and the 15 staff members that were cut at that point. Netherlands. So how many have we replaced in that meantime? Negative 2019?
2, I think.
2?
And,
So
and I have to think a little more harder, but I think 2 different positions, yeah.
So we're net -9 then.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder if another way we could look at where we could utilize some of this additional funding is replacing some of that staff that was let go and offloading some of the workloads that are happening on the managers and the directors. And because obviously people are wearing multiple hats within the organization. When you spread them thin, it makes it more difficult, and it does make everything take longer to happen, right? Because you have one person doing 1.5 jobs. Should we look at potentially with this additional funding investing into our organization at a manpower level, so that if Kara's, I see we're going to hire this, or potentially hire another asset management coordinator position, that takes, she's only got 8 to 10 man hours a day that she can do. You add another person and you take that timeline in half. I'm sure there are other divisions within the organization that you could increase the man hours and get more productivity out of them. I wonder if that's how we need to look at investing our potentially additional money for budgeting in operations.
Your counsel through to Councillor William. Additional resources also create additional requirements on the operations, right? You can't just add one manpower. You have to look at how that reflects the whole bit. And again, in general terms, what you said is correct. and I've always said, resources, we need the resources, right? Again, but I also have to be in mind in regards to where we're at. Mr. World indicated by the end of 2022, we're still on track. So we've continued to meet the needs of council, and like I previously indicated, now the cracks are starting to show as a result of 3 years being very stingent, right, in our resources. Adding resources will definitely help, right? But again, I don't think as the administrator to the organization, you have to have a plan to put the right people in the right places, right? So I don't know if I would want to go that far, right? And again, we identified when we sat down as an organization, 13 positions that this organization over the years is required to put us back on track to where prosperity, if I can use that word. I don't think I'm sitting here today asking for 13 positions, right? Again, each one of those has to be evaluated. I know asset management in accordance to the strategic plan is important. We've identified that in the strategic plan. That position will help us. The half-time infrastructure support staff is also helping deliver that program for that. The equipment operator position is, we see the lack of, we see the crack that we need to be more responsive to our ratepayers' needs on the thing. That more than likely, right? I mean, I think that's what was identified out of those 13. Mindful of what position of this municipality is and 2024 is. So I think that's why when we went through this as a group, as a team, we said this is where we would right? Any new money that we get, we fight it with inflation. We fight it with elsewhere, right?
Councillor Copeland.
Yeah, so I just want to add this on a positive note, because I think that when I look at this from a person that's just been sitting on this council for a year and seeing what's happened in the past, this organization has done a remarkable job, especially with the information that we get today, that we're not working in a line of credit anymore. It's done a remarkable job of recovering from a number of different challenges, which we don't have to go into. The second part of this is that when I look at this budget, I look at the big picture again, and I still see that all of the work that you guys are doing is great in the current picture. But what we also have to look at, not just the service level, and this is something that we have to communicate to our residents, is that if you don't want your tax, you also have to urge economic development to happen within this region in order for us to meet what a good business model would look like. So I think when we're looking at this from a budget perspective, we have to understand if we're putting resources into the hands of our management that deal with the social economic portions of this, and also the economic development piece, because us to deliver the services that our residents expect. And if they expect that they want their roads paved, without there being some additional investment to increase the tax level, I think we're going to be. And so this was approached because it looks to me as a team approach, and that you're still working within the constraints that were put here long before I was here to recover. And so I think when we're looking at this, we have to look at it from a big picture perspective and communicate to our residents that if we don't do the right things now, we're going to be struggling with some of the consequences that Mr. World even indicated in the future. So I think for the most part, this information is a real good basis to start making decisions as to where we put this, but there's still a little economic development. Where are some of the things that we really need to put some other emphasis in order for the municipality to move forward?
Councillor Dean.
Thank you. So just from, if council was to accept, some of these, or this spreadsheet as it's laid out, would we have the flexibility to $100,000 together? Okay.
You have a total flexibility you can take from the third column at the bottom, or third section on the bottom of the operation, and the third one on the capital side. Like,
Okay,
you have $2 million that it should add up to.
Councillor Prestidge and Councillor Dean.
To the chair, to the administration and council. If we use this $2 million, put it back into our budget, like if we do the debenture, I think you said that was $300,000.
190 net.
So,
Correct.
to me, part of that $2 million has to go to that, because if we don't, 300,000 coming out of our operating budget. So we have to be careful where we put it, not just in infrastructure. There's got to be a reason why we put it somewhere.
Councillor Dean.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, everybody agrees with that. We as a group of 7 individuals that are council, we're going to make a motion to give administration direction. But in order to make that motion, we have to rely on what we've been provided as the best advice possible. We can tinker with things here and there, but I wanna accept this as presented as information that was vetted by admin, and this is what they think is the best plan going forward.
Councillor Wilhelm.
So just to follow up on that, progress with the situation at hand, like, do we have a discussion on how much money we want to reallocate? Do we discuss yes or no? Like, how do we move forward with this?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to realize that this $2 million is, again, we're still, and I'm going by the municipal affairs numbers that we're underspending on our assets. Sorry, not underspending on our assets, underspending on our, our infrastructure, what's it called? The
Amortization.
Amortization. The amortization by about 4 or 5 million, is that about right? something like that. That we have, that we're looking at reallocating, we're still underspending on our capital infrastructure by about $4 million. So keep that in mind, that, you know, we've still got a long way to go before we start talking about increasing our service levels. And that has to be the communication piece too, or we risk our sustainability and we just dip right back down into this little valley we just pulled ourselves out of. So that being said, I certainly don't have a problem with reallocating some of the 1.5 versus 2, so 1.8 something. So I don't have a problem reallocating it. The reality is we're just gonna have to run down the list and see what council's priorities are and how they line up. The reason I was asking the question on the asset management end of things, is there a third-party company that you can hire for $300,000 or $500,000 that'll just come in and do your? I don't know. Like I really don't, because I see this as a major stumbling block right now. I ask the question, you know, how to make a good decision on whether to repave this road or not. And the answer is, well, it's coming in asset management. And I know it is. The problem is that we're...
So, your worship, and by 2024, the proposed LG, if the new grant funding will be based on asset management in order to defend our grant funding, right? So we know that we have to have a program of some type in there. Now, again, the question always is how do you detail or level of detail do you provide? You provide that is acceptable. We don't know yet, right? How that will come. However, what we do know is the data that we're collecting is current, based on some historical stuff. And I think Councillor Wilhelm made the comment earlier that we weren't gathering information. Well, or we made our best guess. I think that was, and that's absolutely true for every municipality, because very few were keeping data, collecting data, and using data, right? This is a new concept to say, okay, what's the cost of the road? So now you throw $300,000 at the program. We also have to train our people to start thinking differently, because when the road foremen went out there, they knew from their experience what it's going to take to repair that road, right? And 90% of the time they got it right. Sometimes they missed the mark, right? But again, and that's no different than any individual in our organization. So we have to retrain our people to start to gather that data and keep informed of that. And we're looking at software and various means. So it's going to take some time, right? So I would never recommend having a consultant come in here, provide us off the book a product that may or may not meet our needs. So.
Okay, so just for the one who so told me I was supposed to be keeping the meeting and everything else, let the record show. All right.
That's the third time.
Yeah, Councillor D.
And I just want to bring up a concept that I think, you know, Carrot spoke to the fact that even when a section of that database is complete, it's still benchmark numbers. They're still, we don't know if they're 100% applicable to that piece of infrastructure, whether it's a road, et cetera. So it's going to give us a guideline, but it's not a Bible that we can just 100% rely on. Is that accurate?
Yeah, through, oh boy, worship and members of council. Yeah, like, we're gonna put our. We haven't done They look at the Horse Creek numbers, the model is showing that it would probably cost more. But as we have more projects going through, we should be able to get a better number.
Sure.
But I think it's the asset management for the replacement forecast is going to give you a large, it's gonna give you a number, but it's not gonna be exact, but it's not gonna be, I don't think it would ever be less. And some of the other items, like a fire hydrant or a manhole, like some of those more specific ones, it's easier to get an exact number on it, but I don't know how you, like Andre was gonna do paving and culverts on the Blue Ridge Back Road, and then when the prices come in so high, just because of the way the economy is, how do you manage that in the model? But I think the important part is it's gonna show you guys the timeline of when it should be done. And so we do have condition assessments on all of our roads and our pavement. We have condition assessments on our bridges that we've used from the provincial BIMS database. We're using the structural rating code that the inspectors come up with, and that kind of feeds right into when Andre's applying for grants. Like there's the STIP grant, for example, you apply for the money and they look at that structure rating code, and they take the worst bridges. So we have that data now. It's in one central location. We have maps for you in the plan that show where all the critical ones are, where all the poor fare. Like, it's definitely data by that costing side.
And so you use the example of the proposed culvert repair, and the quotes came back way over budget, so we shelved. We could get a number, expect $10 million, get quotes back, and they're only 7.5. And so I would suggest that we take those numbers, put them in, and to help us down the road. So those are actuals. And so I see the asset management as a tool that we all expect it to be, but I just don't think it's going to be 100%. We know for sure what we're going to spend in 20 years.
Nothing, I don't think anything will get us there, but Councillor Wilhelm.
So, just go back to my previous question before, is how do we progress forward from here? Like, if you look at a line item, asset management coordinator position, I think we all agree that that's gonna help us achieve that goal, right? But if we wanna move forward with this, or if we don't wanna move forward with this, how do we proceed right now as council? Do we talk about each line item? Do we talk about, ask administration to justify why they threw it on here?
We can go through each line item and then we could ask, I don't know, a question like, was the asset manager coordinator position asked for ahead of changing the 2027 goal or after the 2027 goal was changed?
It was identified in your strategic planning document, so it is there.
It is
right?
there.
So
Yeah.
it's not a new.
And it's in no means meant to undermine the efforts made by staff. I feel we've done something. To turn the corner. Unfortunately, there's a long road ahead of us yet. This is the path forward to a sustainable, healthy, well-serviced municipality. So I'm just trying to get that information out there. Councillor Prestige.
Through the chair to administration. Like on the capital budget, you have your first priority, second priority. I would like to see more detailed information on each one, why it is a priority.
Well, we can just go through, so.
Well, if they give us an explanation, then we can ask questions on the explanation. $80,000 for ask, like,
And your worship, members of council, we can do that because we have staff here, but we can also provide you with written detail in regards to it, similar to the notes that are on the commentary on the right side for the operating. For example, and again, not that I'm trying to move forward, but in your $3 million capital, the ones that are there, I can tell you the 525,000 is already committed, right? That truck is ordered, so you have no choice, right? The 5 pickup trucks in the whole Met, we haven't ordered pickups in 3 years now?
At least, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, even our fleet is to the point where we have to. And salt and sand shed, again, you saw the costs associated with them. Those are back on the books to, with increased costs. Close plow truck, is a replacement. The old Blue Ridge Highway paid $600,000 for next year, right? We're doing the culverts this year. That is new on this project, and this is one where is a safety factor for the individuals that live, I would say on the side of the, but on a curve that is on part of the hill that we need to have the bus pull off.
Isn't that one brought to us before?
Identified at the, our one a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And then they homeschool their kids, and now they're
Oh,
that request is back on here. Yeah. The Blue Ridge water distribution pump, again, we got 2, we alternate them every 100 hours or whatever it is, and just the life expectancy of one of the 2 pumps, so to replace that is ensuring that Blue Ridge still has water in the event that one or the other goes down. And then the building condition assessment is beginning to start that process for the asset management. We're moving into the next phase of that.
okay.
So those are the $3 million what we recommend. I mean, again, I think the last 3, 7, 8, and 9 are to a certain degree something that you want to consider that you can move, and to if you were to spend an additional 500,000 out of the 2 million, there are 3 projects that we would consider, and the replacement on Bridge. Richard, this is yours.
Okay, what I have here, 52 south of Horse Creek Road, is a 1.7 by 2.5 meter culvert that's 17 meters in length, so it's fairly healthy. In 1966, it was installed with an expected life of 50 years. It doesn't say they added some steel struts to support it already, so they have extended its life. 2018, it was identified as experiencing cracking in the culvert structure, so it's past its expected life. That's what that one bridge falls for 380.
The airport vicinity protection plan, again, we've gone out to, correct me if I'm wrong, where's June? That we are in the process of finalizing it, if it hasn't already gone out, and we anticipate that cost to be greater than what we have budgeted of 100,000, right?
Yeah, we initially had 110,000. However, there will be some surveying and that we think, and some engineering around it that may cost us more additional.
The hard luck stair replacement is every 5 years. Do we do the engineering on those, or every 3? You were the last one that carried it.
Oh, so 5 years, I believe, for the inspection.
Yeah, it's 5 years. So, again, based on the life expectancy of the hard luck stairs, we are recommending replacing them from normal wood structure to pressure treated. So, get an extended life expectancy, but
There's a cost share portion of this too, isn't there?
that's correct. Yeah. Part of the reciprocal agreement, yeah.
700,000.
The old, so if we go to the next, or 500,000, sorry, 500,000, that should read the old Blue Ridge Fire Hall. This is the one that's across the fire hall that we use primary in the wintertime to store the snow equipment. Just the roof needs replacing or repair on it. Bridge file 78525 is the engineering in this one, Richard.
It's located on Township Road 584, between the southern ends of Range Road 120 and Range Road 121. It's about a 1.8 meter diameter culvert, 54 meters in length, and it has a 50-year expectancy, and they did add those struts as well back in 2013 to extend. It's a large structure, so there's a fair bit of engineering there, but I believe the discussion about connecting 120 and 121 with a road going between the two, that would be on that route.
And it's, where's that road?
Should be about 2/3 of the way down on, there was some clearing for it, I think, somewhere.
Yeah. And the thinking from administration is that due to the number of residents that in the event of some catastrophic event that is coming their way, that they have another opportunity to get out. So it's more from a safety perspective. The airport road paving gravel sections is identified in the master plan, and increase the airport, that we're asking council for that consideration and trying to improve our airport itself. And then I jumped down to the same thing with the taxiway portion and doing the engineering, and that was identified in the plan update that who was it out there that came out? Arrow, was it?
HML.
HML?
HM Arrow.
HM Arrow, yeah. They did a study, we asked them to look at that, and that was the recommendation to the advisory committee, to the airport advisory committee. And then I want to go back to the airport water treatment plant roof replacement. And I guess, Steve, can you speak to that quickly?
It was constructed in 2013, and it was a shingle roof, and it was kind of done towards the with late in the year, and with the wind over the years, it's taken a beat early. We're looking at going with another roof that has a long longevity and should stand up to the wind pretty good.
Prior patch demolition is,
Just 1 minute here, Counselor Dean.
So, you know what, sorry, go ahead, Mr. CEO, finish, and then I'll ask my question.
Briar Patch demolition, everybody's aware of that, I believe council's aware of that in next stage. Airport sweeper core is a replacement of part of the equipment just to, when we brush off the snow off of the runway. That's the clearing of Township Road 584 between 120 and 121. El Selmo Water Station. That one I did. Is that yours? Oh, that's, yes, sorry, I do know about that. Back in, I gotta go back in 2018, the El Salmo Fire Department put in their own well and agreed to, if we supplied them material, they would build it and do everything. And we 5 years later need to finish that project off. So they need some money in regards to doing that. We don't think it's that amount, but when we went through the reduction, that project got left behind and they never continued to finish it, so we need to finish it. Basically, it's a can lock that allows them to access and fill up their tender. County flagpoles is, you recently adopted a policy and we're recommending that you Klondike Cemetery is, we took over the Klondike Cemetery, which is north on the Vega,
661.
yeah, 665. After 3 year, we finally got it, and we're in the process of giving people, when attending funerals, they can park without getting stuck. The 40-foot double door C-can is for the Blue Ridge Fire Department, and that's it.
Counselor Cush. Oh, sorry. Counselor Dean first with his question.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment to council. So going through the infrastructure ranking, and coming back to something that Councillor Wilhelm had said about justifying extra money going into the budget that doesn't necessarily have a direct on residents' life. So I'm not suggesting that I don't support these. I just want to bring this out as a concept. So between the airport-related ranked items and the flagpoles and the landscaping associated with that, there's roughly $300,000 that would be spent. And, you know, I think we need to be careful and weigh that against how we can improve the quality of life for residents that have taken a hit. And as our CEO has mentioned, you know, there's cracks showing up, and yet we're still raising their taxes. So I don't know if that is clear as mud, but I'm just suggesting that in the rankings, in the capital budget, there's a number of things associated with the airport and there's flagpoles that a resident probably doesn't care about, but they care about having a grader on the road.
So there's some of the things like we got obviously the water station would be something for the tenders and stuff to get filled up. We've nice at least finish that project, and the couple of roof repairs. I mean, if you let those things go too long, it's going to end up costing you more money in the end than what we already have budgeted. Or the bridge file would definitely be something we're going to have to look at. So there is a lot of value to a lot of what's on this list. That if we have the funds, I would think it would be kind of prudent to look at before this ends up falling apart further down the road.
Councillor Cook and then Councillor Cook.
Yeah, just a question on the airport water treatment, roof replacement. What dimension is that roof? What is the size of that building?
It's gotta be 20 by 40. Gotta be at least 20 by 40.
30 by 50.
Pull it up. Or sorry.
The reason I asked that question is because I just replaced did a metal roof on a 100 by 40 building, and it was nowhere near 50 grand. In fact, it was quite a bit less than half of that labor included. So I just don't know where that
Your
number came
labor?
from.
Your labor?
What's that?
Was it a contractor or your labor?
My labor at contract,
Yeah.
because I install metal roofs, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, no, and so you paid for the
that's-
material.
I paid for the material and I included my cost of putting it on, which would have been a contractor's rate
So you're
by the
saying
square foot.
You wanna do that roof then?
Yeah, put it,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, sounds like we gotta, yeah, just can't vote for it.
What's that?
You get a quote from a local roofer,
Yeah,
and that number is based on his quote.
boy, I'd like to know.
You just have
You
to
gotta
go outside
up
the
your
rates,
rates,
man.
I must
That's
up,
it.
Up your rates.
because my installation rate on that was $2.50 a square foot, nothing removed. So I just find for a building that size, that is a ridiculous quote.
The building size is 34 by 45.
By 40. So
I used to drive by it every day and think, why does it have asphalt shingles on it? So I'm glad to see it's finally going to metal.
and I agree with Mr. Cush as well, is that if the roof is at a point where it's going to start causing problems, it does need to be replaced, otherwise it's gonna cost us the building.
Yes, go ahead.
So, just so we keep this moving forward here, when I look at your guys, I see you did it well with the capital budget. You said if you gave us $500,000, these are the first three things that we would choose, or these are how I rank the three things that we might include. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this properly on the operating budget. If we were to give you an additional if an additional $500 was provided towards administration, you would start with this first section. That's, you kind of ranked it by section as the, what you thought would be the greatest needs?
Yes, in the, how do I explain this? With the understanding that half was going to capital and half was going to operate. So based on those first two columns, those would be our priorities if it was $1 million, right? Again, in order to make the first 500,000, that's what we would have to do, right? With knowing that automatically there's 200,000 off the top because of that debenture, 190,000, right?
So I mean,
So it's difficult to say, sorry, when it's a priority. I can tell you the first two columns of the million is the priority to make. Again, like the bicentennial funding, unfortunately, it's in the third column because, one, it's a backstop, but we don't know if that's 100,000, and maybe we don't need it.
So, just so I understand, if we decide, no, we're not gonna reallocate any of this money to operating capital, what will we do with it? Where will it go?
Go to surplus into your monies that you got. Wouldn't go into reserves because you're still banking, but it would basically just be surplus funds.
So, okay.
So you get to your finish line faster. Like based on, if you did that and you don't need that allowance next year, you'd get to the finish line even faster than 2024. Because you'd be extending it, because we don't think you're gonna need that 2 million next year in the allowance.
Right.
I'm gonna just recognize Mr. Twack. He's
Just through the chair to council, you were just asking if there was, just if we stuck to the 1% increase as far as operations? Okay, so some of the notes we have there, we have that $191,000 debenture. And we've kind of gone through to see what we would need to do, so, and this is only for this year coming up. We would eliminate the gravel program, the re-gravel, so we would not be graveling for a year. We would be asking to increase our equipment repair by $100,000, and that's, you know, we looking at some of the repairs we've had on the graders and whatnot, so this first stage doesn't include leasing graders. And just to go back to the one thing you'd asked, does this, like, would this increase our service levels? Not so much yet, but it would help get our equipment back to the stage that we could start doing that, because we'd lease 2 graders, but we'd sell off our 2 worst graders, so we wouldn't be increasing our graders. The reliability would be better, same as there's a plow truck in there too. We'd have no more trucks, but we'd have more reliable fleets. So this does include $100,000 of repairs increased for expected equipment repairs. The service level would be, we're calling it kind of erratic, because again, if we have this equipment that we're running, like I say, we've had a grader down almost all year, in like not one, but any at one particular time, we've been short graders. Contractors, really hard to find for graders too. So, you know, we find them sometimes for a few weeks and then we can't keep them. And
Does increase, through the chair to Mr. Twack, does adding an equipment operator position, does that increase the amount of beats we can do, or just make more reliability?
well, part of it is to help when we're doing this capital asset management. There would be a person, because like for half the year, he's been over on that side, so we've been short an operator. But it would also, we're gonna eliminate our ditching program, which we were starting to do this year, and we wanna focus on, as a result of that, our culvert maintenance program, where we've got a lot of culverts that are half plugged up, and come springtime, we're all paving them. So we would take, that equipment operator would help with that as well, cover the asset management, but it wouldn't be increasing our fleet on the road. Like, we're not really increasing our equipment, no matter which ones these you look at, we're just upgrading it or getting a little more back up to standard.
So this investment would be into maintaining service levels as opposed to increasing them?
Yep. And even at the next stage, when we lease graders, it'd still be maintaining it, but we're gonna have two more reliable graders in the fleet. So we're not increasing the number of graders out on the beat. That's something you guys, we're just sort of slowly recovering. That's our start, is get a better reliable equipment to start that way. So until we could actually add 2 more pieces of graders and operators, that's when we would go back to increasing it.
Go ahead. Just so we can continue to move forward with this. In my opinion, I would, as much as I want to see us meet our financial goal faster, I think I would like this situation, I would like to utilize the situation where we have the ability to increase funding to do that in 2 ways. I'd like to increase the operating budget personally and the capital budget. How much we do that, I think, is still open to discussion, but that's where I would like us to trend towards. I just don't know if the rest of the council, are you guys saying, no, we should focus on getting back to our end goal faster and not increase that? Because if we're looking at our initial stumbling block, do we all even agree that we want to start increasing these budgets? Or does the majority say, no, we don't want to do that, we're going to push this money towards reserves?
everybody's got their hand up. I'm gonna recognize Mr.
There's a
Frank.
third option, extending your financial recovery for 7 years, and that was briefly talked about, but I didn't think council had that appetite, so I never brought that. But there is a third option, and that's a combination of where you sit, right? So reinvesting and start reallocating some of your capital reserves, i.e. equipment replacement, right? Because there is 4 million, it just, you need to take out your.
Yeah, so to that end, if we reallocate the 2 million, it doesn't move us any further away from our goal, our 5-year economic recovery goal, unless we end up in the next year not being able to collect more than $3 million because we still have that $3 million uncollectible allowance in the next budget, which is, it's not found money, but given the way that things were and the rest of the municipalities, because we had no mechanism to collect taxes unless we start digging up right-of-ways, which is a conversation we still need to have. But no, it gets us on, it keeps us on that 5-year economic recovery track. And I'm actually, yeah, I'm with you on that. The reality is that we did well in putting that 3 million in. What was the original, was it 40,000 or? It was 40,000 in 17 that was allocated for as uncollectible. And it wasn't realistic at all. So, once we went to the 3 million, we were, we saw that, like, this is what, year 4 now, right?
You will be entering year 4.
Yeah, so
you've
this is
had
planning
3.
for year 4.
You had 3 years of it.
Right, so this is the 4th year of our recovery.
3rd year. Then, sorry, this will be your 4th year.
Right.
Yes.
We're planning for the 4th. So, yeah, and we needed that 3 million in the first little while. Things are looking better now. So, we did good in the plan, so it's time to reap the benefits of good planning. That's my opinion. Councillor.
I was gonna actually say a bunch of what you covered there. The having the extra funds, I mean, it doesn't, putting it in there, sure, it jumps the financial, goalposts that much closer, but we can still stay on track for where we're going as long as we're still, fiscally responsible for the next couple of years in our plan to keep going. But having that money and sitting on it versus putting it back into some of these things that have come up or are kind of falling down or falling apart that we haven't had the ability to do, or like some of the equipment replaced in the last little bit, isn't going to benefit us either. As much as you see the list and you see in front of it the explanation for some of this stuff, and as much as, last time we talked about this with the extra funds before this meeting, I would have loved to have seen basically everything get put away for, the future, for kind of like a rainy day. I think we're getting to the point where some of, like the CAO said, some of these cracks are coming through, and some of this stuff, if we don't address it short order, could end up costing a lot more in the long run. I would support the administration and kind of giving what we have here and letting them try to get some of these, I guess, our operational back and some of the capital.
I kind of agree with Dave. I just want the administration to think it's just a windfall and do whatever they want with it. It has to be well documented what it's being used for.
And something too that council needs to be aware of is that next year, when budget plan, the province is still looking at the assessment model review. If they change the assessment model review and come back at us with that stupid D, that was $3 million again. The discussions we were having at the time were pretty scary. So anyway, I think council's pretty clear on this. Councillor Copeland?
Yeah, I think that, I'm the consummate farmer who is living the dream 3 out of 5. So I'm pretty cautious when it comes to spending money, but I also understand that, that if you leave some things go too long, it takes a long time to recover that, and the damage sometimes is greater than the good. One of the things that I really would like us to look at, again, is there a place where we can put a little bit of extra funding in some of those key areas that we really need to work on as far as economic development goes, because I still think that we need major takes a few extra dollars to get us there. Is there a place for that that would exclude us from that, or that would keep us within the framework of the recovery plan? That would be the only question that I would have.
Your worship, members of council, and again, as I think it's important to understand that as a municipality as a whole, you have a number of different programs and services, and even though infrastructure is the vast majority, you have to consider the other departments. However, again, and I just throw the chamber events of $7,500. That alone, what's his budget? 284, let's even say 300,000. Let's give 300,000. So 1% of that is $3,000, right? That's all he's got to play with. That doesn't cover the chamber events. You know what I'm saying? So again, from an operational perspective, we sat down as a group and said, how do we reallocate those funds and where do we need to and try to balance? And I don't know if I did a very good job of balancing council's need versus staff needs, right? But I think from our perspective, we tried to say, okay, here's some of the things. And again, in an ideal world, every 3 years is kind of the benchmark that municipalities use to update their run. And the more you do, the more it changes, right? But there's some stuff that's being missed as a result of that too. So again, there's a huge balance.
So when I go through this quickly, kind of on the operational side, and I think it's important that people realize too that when you look at a ditching and a drainage and a culvert unplugging type of program, that's not just issues that we have is that water ingress underneath into and underneath the road. So if the water can't move in the ditch or it's running too high up the sides, you end up with heavy roads which ruin everything that's in the roads. They end up with a soft shoulder. There's all kinds of problems associated with that ditching, which is one of the reasons why we've been focused on it. So there's an infrastructure spend there. Increasing in equipment repairs, another equipment operator. The financial manager position, it's the capacity that we didn't have at the time that Alicia was here was she was acting like a director of corporate services, a financial planner, and a controller. She was overwhelmed. There were so many times I drove by here at 7 o'clock and her car was still outside.
And that's the observation from Mr. World, right? And that's why that position is in there.
Right. And a controller to that end, is part of this kind of a controller type idea, or am I off base?
So your worship here, it is partially that, but it's really more of around a risk to the organization. So the finance department, in my view, is so lean that we have a challenge cross-training anybody to be, because we need to have backup for every position. And we actually have it where if one person left, I don't believe anybody would know how to run taxes. That would be the risk to the organization. Sorry, maybe Joan. Maybe Joan could run taxes, because I think she used to do that at one point. So it's a one side of it is the risk down the department, and the other part is getting the director to actually be a director I mean, I spent half an hour planning the front counter today because we had a person that wasn't there, right? You're just spending time doing things that aren't where you should be spending your time as the corporate director.
Yeah.
So it's, and it's not gonna stop, if you don't have another resource there. It's just gonna continue on. And I don't wanna set up the next person for failure. Because I worried about the time back at the county years, right? So I want this team to involve in their role and do what Gord needs as a support for the CAO position, right?
Okay, and then, we've got shoulder pull programs and other things that are through here in the operational side. So there's a few things, and I'd agree with you on the flag poles and some of that landscaping. And I know we were talking about paving our parking lot one year. That was one of the things, that was a long time ago.
Oh, no, your worship, that comes up every year. And I, every year, go, thank you very much. It comes up.
So anyways, there's a few things on here that we could probably agree to get off, but, go ahead.
Was tomorrow to also discuss this document here?
Yeah, it's a continuation of today's meeting, depending on,
So with that being said, I think we're in a somewhat of agreement that we want to reallocate money to the budget, right? I think that's what everybody's been saying.
Okay, so we have, let's go down the list.
your worship, Councillor William, I think is what.
Wilhelm.
Wilhelm, sorry. How come I started saying
We'll just
that?
continue, we're gonna
The same.
combine our last names here,
Yeah.
Wilhelmians.
Mr. Jeremy, I'll call him Mr. Jeremy. Is indicating if you want to end today's meeting and then come back tomorrow, and I'm not, maybe I missed that
No.
cue.
Definitely saying I'd like this to be up at some point, but.
I think, I think more than any.
Can we make this work?
What do we do here with our reallocation? Do we do it in capital? Do we do it in operating? Do we do it in a combination of? And where does council see the value? I don't think there's any disagreement at the council level that the reallocation of the 2 million is necessary to keep it's not an increase in service levels, but it's to make sure that we don't go any further. And honestly, if we decided that we were gonna turn this operation around on a dime and threw $10 million at it, extra, it'd probably still take 2 years before anybody saw a difference.
Saw what?
A difference.
It'd be pretty close.
Yeah. Councillor Kush.
Say with the 2 million, we have $1 million split between operational and $1 million between capital. And going through the list, I would be okay with going with the administrative's suggestions on this list. And this is currently where they feel it's best, especially with capital, and I can agree with a lot that's on that list. And, it's not, like I said, this isn't a windfall, it's just extra money that people have paid this year. It's, nice to have a little bit of unanticipated funds come in that we weren't exactly looking for, but this list can go a long ways within the organization.
Councillor Dean, then Councillor Wilhelm.
So just to clarify for me, then if we went with that, based on the list that was presented, we'd be talking about from the capital side, column 2 and 3 would be in, and each around 500,000. And on the operating side, it would be everything above the second yellow line,
Yeah, the first 2 levels.
first 2 levels.
I just to comment.
Okay, hold on. Councillor Wilhelm first.
So, well, I asked that question, is that correct?
Well, short answer, yes.
Okay, so everything above the second yellow line adds up to $1 million, and those 2 columns 2 and 3 adds up to $1 million-ish.
$1,037,000 and 1,000,010.
Sure. Okay.
Or a little short, 1,000,087. 7 plus 5, 10, whatever that works out.
1,007,000. So if we're using that as our benchmark of where we want to start, I think that's a good place. I think there are some things in capital that we can eliminate to then move to that third column, because I think adding additional the infrastructure support staff would be beneficial to the team. I don't think air photos are, at this point, are something that are critical.
Stay late.
You know which?
Air photos?
Oh, Joan's gonna get.
Let's do
Or
some of
just
this
the,
and add some of this.
This is Joe. Yep.
So what if we're gonna start the conversation from there, I think we can look at some of the stuff in the third column on capital that aren't critical, and potentially stuff in the third section of operating as critical. If we're gonna, I think that's a good starting spot.
yeah,
So we can cross off rows 1 or sections 1 and 2 on operating, and section 1 on capital, and then just start eliminate from capital and add to operating.
sorry,
Does that make sense?
say that again?
You went way too fast.
Sorry, guys. I'm thinking we're kind of in agreement. This is what they've tiered as most important on operating.
Yeah.
And we've already kind of said we agree with that, essentially, right? And we've got capital here. This first row we kind of agree with. It's this second row, I think we should eliminate items off of that and add that value into the operating, because I don't think, like, we eliminating the 40-foot C-can, Klondike parking and county pools. Those are just examples. I'm not saying those are the ones we want to do. And we could add infrastructure support staff and, I don't know,
No,
update investment profiles, et cetera. You know what I mean?
And you know what, that might be an efficient break for today, is to take this home
Mhm.
and run through these. If you've got specific, so based on that, since we've got our staff in front of us, sorry, not our staff, his staff. Since we've got, staff in front of us, and is that the general direction? Yes? People wanna go in? And here's why I'm asking, because we can go on the stuff that we're thinking, because I'm thinking we're gonna have some agreements on some of these. While staff is here, we can just ask, is there a reason why we shouldn't eliminate 40-foot C-can? Is there a reason why we shouldn't do this in exchange for that? So is that,
Yeah.
and then we can marinate on this overnight. and
Absolutely.
We can come back tomorrow and make some decisions.
And I think if we start on capital side, bottom up, right, that they've ranked capital 1 through 12. Let's look at the bottom 6 and say, are those that important? And should we move that dollar value? That's almost $200,000.
So is council okay with that approach?
Yeah.
All right, do you want to ask questions on the, third layer, I guess, of the operating budget, below the second line? Unless there's something in the first two that we want to eliminate, but I don't think there is.
The question I have then would be, briar patch demolition, does it hurt for it to stand there for another year?
We just boarded it up for 25,000, and people break in, we boarded it up again. Yeah, all the asbestos, everything's ready, it's ready to demolish.
Can we not do fire training on that now that it's?
They do fire training in there, but they don't
Yeah,
like,
a lot
they
of
do,
fire training.
they do not, your worship members of council, I will make it clear, they do not do any fire-related training, they
find the right
do
guy
rescue
and
training for that.
It's been
No, but-
suggested many times.
My question is just, is it a problem for it to be another year standing there?
How old is the new library, 8 years? 5, 6? Yeah, so 7 years, so it's sat for 7 years. Another year won't hurt.
That's what we've been saying for
Yeah.
Well,
Fire department would love it.
and there's another strategy too, in the fact that we could, so let's say we're 3 years, we got 3 years on the council left to go, and we could take 33,000 out of the 100,000 and push it annually. And at the end of the 3 years, we got enough to demolish it.
We did that once
Yep.
already.
I know we did that once already. Then the you know what hit the fan, and there was a little bit of money put aside. So
I'm worried about it. Kids are breaking into it, somebody's gonna get hurt.
it's a liability.
It is a liability. And plus, with the province, I believe, Gord, isn't there something coming out where we have to look after?
We've done that. The asbestos.
It's his best.
Yeah, it had to be done by the end of 2023.
Yeah.
I would like to keep that one in.
Okay, I'm just throwing it out there.
Just looking at the way, as far as, we'll say, county flagpoles landscaping, I know it'd be nice to get that done, but we have 70,000 less there for that, and in the other side, on the operating, there's 100,000 for the bicentennial funding. I mean, I'd rather, I know we're got about a $30,000 disparity here still, but I'd rather put the money towards that bicentennial than landscaping currently for this year. I mean, obviously, something else would have to come out for the 30,000 difference, but
Is this the flag?
And it might not be, there might be no difference, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's a backstop, and the real ask could be
exactly, currently, as
20,000.
far as numbers go,
Yeah.
I would rather allocate it that way.
It's just
New
efficiencies.
boardroom cameras,
So if we
we have new boardroom cameras.
it takes us
That's the fine.
4 hours.
Good fine.
And keep
The 40-foot double door C-cam, what is that for again?
Mr. Sheldon will provide.
So that's be used for storage at Blue Ridge. Plus, they're thinking about half of it being a training area, blackout training area for their members. They currently are using the Briar Patch. They currently are going in there and using their.
That's
So if we just leave it
That's
up to
net-
save ourselves 112.
That's at 110,000. Wow.
That's an easy decision.
And there's a risk of fire.
Sorry, Bruce. Sorry, Councillor Preston.
Sorry. If we don't put a little levity in this, we're
Half a
we're gonna get.
C-can or a whole building? What's more fun than training?
That's where that would go to.
All right, no, and this is why we're trying to ask these questions,
Yep.
because, okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, from my, sorry, I should put my hand up, but.
Just throw it out there.
6 through 12, if we took those out of funding, if we didn't fund those ones, that leaves us with an additional $245,000 to add into the operating budget, which we could use then to add infrastructure support staff and whatever else we want to. We can discuss that tomorrow, but that's, if you want to know where my mindset is on it, that's where I'm starting.
What was your number there?
245,000 to add into that third section of operating.
6 through 12 adds up to
Yep.
225.
7 through 12.
So, Your Worship,
And it ain't 225,
That's
it's
what
125.
Your Worship,
225 or
245.
You're talking about helping residents. Well, this Briar Patch is of great importance to the residents there on the safety. I get complaints
What are
about it.
firefighters thing?
I don't care about the firefighters.
Whoa.
It's resident safety.
Whoa.
Councillor Preston does care about the firefighter.
Yeah, I do, but
Thanks.
That's affirmative.
this thing has been put on hold for so many years.
So-
And residents are getting very upset about it.
Worship, your members of council, and suggestion 1,000 in the bicentennial. By April of next year, when we've set the final budget, could you swap those two out, knowing what you would require? And I know this might not be the answer you want, but it could end up if they get funding the bicentennial, you could then replace that. If not, you'd have to wait a year, and then it would be part of your $3 million capital for sure, if that's a commitment with this council.
I've heard this for the last 5
Yeah,
years on this project.
And I don't disagree.
And if we're allocating $2 million into this budget, I think this should be part of it.
I was just joking when I said we could save $112,000. Jeez.
We could paint it.
Okay, any other questions on items on this list? Well, we have everybody here. Let's start it.
I'd like to think about it tonight. Get some ideas, even for that.
No, I mean, just like, you know what everything is.
I think so, yeah. I believe so.
Everybody's comfortable with what everything is. Yes? Okay.
Yeah,
Did
your
we,
worship and members of council, we're meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. 9:30, sorry. Thank you. Do you want the package or the, member? It is 9 a.m.
9 o'clock.
That's what I thought.
I'll have to get up early. Do we want the package for which?
For the members at large in closed session at your budget meeting, we can do it as an addition to the agenda. Everything's ready.
Yeah, we might as well get that out of the way.
That would be good.
We'll hit the send button. You'll have them tonight for review and
Over, I know that there was a huge issue. Oh, sorry, we'll call the meeting to a close here. And then I'll talk about that.
Cliffhanger.
What's that?
Cliffhanger.
Well, it's not related to council business.
We just need to make a motion for, information for the discussion today.
So we'll just adopt this for information for now, the discussion for information, and adjourn till tomorrow?
that's correct.
Well,
All right, I'll make the, motion to have the budget deliberations of information.
okay. Any discussion? All in favor? One more.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Oh, wow.
Precedent setting.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming.